There are now new point-blank accusations that Pakistan is still harboring terrorists, even as we give them billions in aid. Democratic Senator Col Wilkerson, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, says he believes that top levels of the Pakistani government knew about bin Laden and that they know about other terrorists as well.
The thing which astounds me more than anything, of course, is the idea that people in Pakistan higher up in the intelligence service or their army or police or local officials didn't know he was there. I find that so difficult to believe. There's a bigger issue here. They do know where the Haqqani network is, okay?
Terrorist network that's killing a lot of U.S. troops in Afghanistan.
Now, they know that while we're giving them billions in aid. We've given a total of $20 billion since 2001. Lately, we've been doling out at least $1.3 billion a year, and we're apparently getting very little in return. Pakistan has gotten very used to us not holding them accountable through all of the Bush years, where we seem to have put very little pressure on them. Remember, Bush had no clue about Pakistan when he took office. Here's Bush as a candidate in 1999, unable to name the leader of Pakistan.
The new Pakistani general has just been elected. He's not elected. This guy took over office. He appears he's going to bring stability to the country, and I think that's good news for the subcontinent.
And you can name him.
General. I can't name the general.
And it's
General.
Two things to note. Not only couldn't Bush name Pervez Musharraf, but Musharraf definitely was not elected. He came to power in a military coup, and it was definitely not good for the subcontinent. Now, that level of ignorance did wind up becoming very relevant as the Bush administration just kept trusting Musharraf over and over again, as if he was good for Pakistan and good for our interests. By 2006, the evidence was already mounting that Pakistan was giving cover to terrorists. But the Bush team still didn't get it.
The Pakistanis aren't willing to seek bin Laden and have a peace pact with the terrorists. Where are we?
I don't buy the premise of your question. President Musharraf has been a great ally. Fact is, Musharraf has put his neck on the line in order to be effective in going after the extremist elements, including al-Qaeda and including the Taliban in Pakistan.
Oops. They had the wrong strategy. They were soft on Pakistan. Barack Obama promised a different strategy during the campaign. He said, we're going to act with or without them. And now, bin Laden is dead. And word today that U.S. has launched its first drone attack in Pakistan since the killing of bin Laden. Pakistani officials say the attack killed 10 people in a Taliban stronghold near the Afghan border. You want to talk tough on terror? That's how you do it. Joining me now is retired Army Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who served as the Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell in the Bush administration. Colonel Wilkerson, great to have you here. Now, I know that Pakistan has a lot of nuance. It's not as simple as you give them aid or you don't give them aid. There are different people within their government. But to the outside world, as you look back at the Bush administration, it appeared that we were far too trusting of the Musharraf government.
I'd say that's probably a fair assessment. But I listened to your lead-in, and I was thinking the most damaging thing we did in the Bush administration was we took our eye off the ball in the Afghan-Pakistan theater. When we went to Iraq, it became basically a backwater theater, an economy of force theater, we say in the military. We just don't have the assets to put that kind of emphasis on two theaters simultaneously. So when we went to Iraq, Afghanistan was just there. We weren't doing very much there. It was wasted time. And in that time, as you pointed out, Musharraf spent most of the money we were giving him on beefing up the army to confront India, not on delivering jobs to his people, better infrastructure, education, and so forth, which should have been the purpose of that money.
Colonel Wilkerson, I'm really curious as to what happened inside the White House, because obviously there are a lot of smart people who work there, including your boss, Colin Powell, including yourself, that knew the dynamic within Pakistan. So when you guys said, hey, wait a minute, what do we do? Why are we taking our ball, I assume, taking our eye off the ball in Afghanistan and Pakistan? What was the reaction? How did it work internally?
I don't think there was as much argument as there should have been. The argument was more, the debate, I should say, was more over whether we should do Iraq at all. My boss was adamant that there were a couple of reasons why we shouldn't do it at the time we did it. One was that we didn't have the international support and thus the international legitimacy. And the other one, probably more to your point, was that it was bad timing. We simply didn't have the armed forces, the assets to prosecute 2 theaters with vigor simultaneously. And so he knew that if we were going to Iraq, we were going to leave the theater that was probably the more important one on its own for a long period of time, however long it took us to stabilize things in Iraq. And we knew it was going to take longer than 5 or 6 months to do Iraq right.
You know, I remember back then I was pulling my hair out. I'm like, he's in Afghanistan. Why are we going to Iraq? Why are we sending more people to Iraq than we are to the Afghanistan-Pakistan area where we know Al-Qaeda is? It made no sense to me.
I think that's just become so clear that I wonder why the American people haven't gotten onto it yet. Yesterday, or day before yesterday, the Iraq oil report made the projection that there's 100 billion barrels for sure, 200 billion probably, and at the outside 300 billion. That dwarfs Saudi Arabia. I know why Dick Cheney went to Iraq.
Wow. So you're saying that it didn't have to do with Al-Qaeda or Bin Laden. Obviously, they weren't there, and you guys knew they weren't there. It had to do with the oil.
That was the camouflage. That was to get the American people excited about going to war in Iraq again. The real reason for Iraq, and incidentally the reason we aren't coming home anytime soon, is the oil.
You know, you mentioned Dick Cheney there as if he was making the decisions. I want to play one more clip here from George Bush in that same interview when he was asked about world leaders, and then get a response from you. Let's watch first.
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you?
Can you name the president of Taiwan?
Yeah, Lee. The new Pakistani general has just been elected. He's not elected. This guy took over office. He appears he's going to bring stability to the country, and I think that's good news for the subcontinent.
And you can name him?
General. I can't name the general.
And it's?
General.
Prime Minister of India?
The new Prime Minister of India is, no.
Now, at the time, I remember some people said, well, that was unfair. You can't ask somebody running for president to know world leaders. But his profound lack of knowledge, did it lead to people like Dick Cheney being able to really take control and do things that the president, you know, was not savvy enough to understand?
In my view, absolutely so. The president was not steeped in much of anything, certainly not foreign policy. Dick Cheney is one of the most competent, capable bureaucrats I've ever met. I worked in the Pentagon when he was Secretary of Defense. I would have declared him at the end of that time period the best Secretary of Defense since James Forrestal. But that best was because of his decision-making ability, his executive ability. He brought that ability to the White House. George W. Bush did not possess that ability. Ergo, guess who became president in that first term?
More strong words. That's why we love having you on. Real truth. That's what we try to get at here. Retired Army Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, as always, a great pleasure to have you tonight.
Thanks for having me.